Hey everybody, Jeremy here. Thanks for joining Fish Fam, folks. Um, just going to do another quick tank talk on another 55-gallon guppy tank. This is a bunch of just assorted fancy guppies that did not fit into my other more strict hierarchies for breeding and keeping colors and such. So these guys are mostly yellow bodied, and some of my red guppies that may have had a little less red intense color, so they're not down with the half black reds in the breeder tank or their community, but they are hanging out up here in this planted tank that is intended to be more of a Central American, North American tank, leaning with kind of a guppy around the world theme or something. But I do have several non-American plants in here, namely this red dwarf lily, Nymphaea nucali or nucali, synonymous with Nymphaea stellata. It's the dwarf lily or dwarf red lily or dwarf lotus lily, blue lotus, star lotus, red and blue water lily. It goes by a lot of names depending on where you are, what sort of theater you're discussing, whether it's aquariums or aquaculture or gardening. People tend to just have a lot of names for this plant, but it's definitely not an American plant. It is a Southeast Asian native, but it's just doing so well in here. I kind of hate to take it out. It's also propagating pretty well. Let me see if I can get in here and show you a little bit. You can see how there are several like inverted triangles down there toward the sand. It is to the point where I could definitely break off 2 or 3 of these plants. That's pretty cool because this aquarium has only been going about 6 weeks. And similarly, some of these other non-Native American plants, this Hygrophila deformis and Pogostemon stellatus, were just really in here at the time when I didn't have nearly enough North American plants to fill. Since then, I've gotten quite a few. The tank right below it is full of North American plants, and I really want it to be full of South American plants. But I'll be pulling a lot of them up here. I've got several other tanks that have some native North American plants that I found just right here in my yard and very, very local to my yard, being exactly adjacent to it. But from that, some of those plants will get moved up here and some of these Asian plants will move out. I think there are several other species of fish in here. We might not get a glimpse of them. There are also at least 3 species of snails. There are ram's horn, Mediterranean trumpet snails, and pond snails, as opposed to bladder snails. Pond snails look a lot like bladder snails, but their cones are, dextral rather than sinistral, and pond snails don't have the little yellow spots that bladder snails have on their shells. Otherwise, they look a lot alike. I'm not sure exactly when or how they're related, so I'll have to get back to that if we ever do a snail talk. But the snails are doing pretty darn well in here. There are several types of moss, but there's only one type of moss in here that is an American native. Physidens fontanus, phoenix moss. You can see that right there on the glass. It's one I know well, but let's see if I can zoom in a bit more. I might just actually have to physically get closer. Because this tank is so high, I'm actually on a ladder right now. But yeah, I'm gonna bail from the ladder and give you guys a good close-up of Fontanus and see if we can get a good look at that. This is one of my favorite mosses for aquariums. It grows super slow. I got this and another piece, which I think is like right up there. Yeah. Months ago, like literally months ago. And while it has really puffed up, it hasn't really spread out much. So I'm hoping that it will really start doing that soon. There's also some Java moss and some Christmas moss, I think, in here, just hiding, giving the guppies the fry a place to hang out. And that's why this Hygrodeformis was in here, and the Rotala rotundifolia is in here. That's not an American plant. Obviously, the Pogostellum stellatus is not either, but once the American plants really start coming into their own, I'll be removing the Asian plants. But as far as the American plants, here's some pretty cool ones. Ludwigia ovalis was collected locally. Bacopa caroliniana can be collected locally. There's one of my other fish there. This is just a common bristlenose Ancistrus albino guy, probably 1 inch long at the moment. That's the only one of them in here. In a previous video I mentioned I had a kind of catastrophe with my albinos that were outside, but these chain swords doing really well. This is a deep substrate tank, so probably 1 inch or 1.25 inches of carefully prepared substrate, followed by maybe 2.5 inches of concrete sand. And let's see here. Yeah, those chain swords are really rocking it out. They've been in here, like I'd say at least 4 weeks, but probably not much longer, but long enough to really start putting out some chains. And that's what I wanted them to do. I'll probably kind of stop them here, cut this, or maybe take that bit and turn it back in that area or something, so the chain swords can maybe carpet out this area. But a few days ago I got ignore the text there, these little green plants down here. That's S. ripens, Storangian ripens, and it's a really nice plant that kind of looks like maybe a green version of that when it gets a little bigger. That's AR, but let's take a look over at these things. And my note down here, the mermaid weed is just something I would like to add to this tank because it is a Central American, North American thing. Ludwigia ovalis was on there simply because that was my best match for this plant, which is the same as the one that I was showing you on the other side over here. And while I'm not 100% sure on that ID, that's my best, most close ID on that plant right now, and that's what I believe it to be. Back here, Ludwigia, a very common one. I don't know why it's escaping me. But we also have some Cabamba green, which is Cabamba aquatica, as well as the other Cabamba that's back in the other corner, some Rotala rotundifolia. And again, that's not an American plant, but I think it's going to stay in here just for a little while because it's probably good for the guppies just while they're hanging out. And down here, this is something that I've been mystified by because this is a flame sword hybrid. Now this is Echinodorus schuler, or I'm losing it. I think I have it written down somewhere. Schluteri and Barthari, or Barthii cross. So this plant doesn't occur naturally in the wild, and it looks a lot like what I believe to be a native Echinodorus species, which, let's see, right down here, but you can see those veins and such that come up. This is called the corded sword, or Echinodorus cordifolius, and yeah, you can kind of see that cordifolius look, but it's also mimicked up here and its cousins, and Schluteri, I believe, is the melon sword, and Barthi is a green sword that has a look a lot more like a normal Amazon sword. I don't have one to show you, but let me look down here. Okay, so a leaf shape a lot more like that, where you can't really see these corded veins like this plant or the other one that I just showed down here. That one, which was a yard art native that I robbed and stuck in the tank. and I'm just really glad it's still alive. I'm hoping it does survive long term. It's only been a few weeks. But anyway, this guy's just rocking. And normally I have a really intense light. Now, this is a dimmable 2000 watt separate red-blue spectrum grow lamp. And I've got it up there because I can dim it a bit and just turn on the blues and really try to let them veg out in that blue light. But also these guys down here, the Esripins, I'm hoping that they will really enjoy that, and maybe the Ludwigias and such, and just everything that's around will enjoy the brighter light. I've got it off and out right now because the cord I've got is too short. It kind of hangs down across the front of the tank, and that's fine for me just hanging out here during the day, but if I'm trying to make a video and show somebody, it's kind of awkward, and yeah, didn't need that. So just looking at this tank more structurally, there are only 2 stones. They're really large, but this is all of the structure that this tank got as far as hardscape. Kind of a mounded stone and a cupped stone that's accentuating it, and then a little bit of hard vine softscape. And these are very, very hard. Took them a long time to sink, but they are really doing their thing. And I kind of enjoy that bow effect that they make. It's just very different. I would, excuse me, I should have painted the back of this tank. Once I got it up in here, I just couldn't, and it took me a while to hide. There's actually an electrical outlet right behind that big rock, and then you can see some wires coming up there, and I just hate that. The one air hose that you see actually isn't air. There's no air being pumped in here. That was a CO2 line from before this was a deep substrate tank. Again, going back about 6 weeks, I pulled gravel out of this tank, and the story behind this tank and why I'm really doing this highlight on Tank Talk on this one right now is this is the tank that got me frustrated with gravel. It had me pulling my hair out. My guppies were getting sick. I did not know why. It was not very stable. I've had aquariums for a long time, and I lost most of my really important yellow orange breeders, like I mean like 2/3 of them. So this afterward I just had to put the tank back together however I could as far as fish, and it just ended up like a hodgepodge of guys and gals. But it was just a regular gravel tank, and it wasn't very stable. And I started really comparing it to other things because I've had dirted tanks for years and years, and not that I was doing it right. I needed some help. I think I've gotten that help now. Thank you very much. But anyway, this was just, it was absolutely frustrating me. My fish were dying. I was chasing my tail going, it's not ick, it's not this, it's not their diet, it's not something, it must be their owner. Yeah, he must be a bad guy. He's killing the fish. Well, I finally came across Father Fish, and it got me thinking about some other things like, I really don't have this problem in my other dirted tank. Same size right below it with lots of fish in it. So after a while, I started testing with small tanks, 10 gallons, 20 gallons, 29 gallon, and then I just bit the bullet, emptied this tank, and mixed up some substrate, capped it with sand as direction, and began planting it again, and put the guppies that I had left that kind of fit the description that I was okay with putting in here. And here we are. A little over a month later, the tank has had CO2 off almost the entire time. I kept noticing that the drop indicator, which you can see up there in the top left, right under the letter E, which is circled, it just stayed kind of an olive green, limey color, and that indicates that it's got quite a bit of carbon dioxide dissolved in the water. So I just cut it off and kept watching that, and to my amazement, for weeks after that, the tank was still producing quite a bit of carbon dioxide. Plants were growing like crazy, as you can see. It's really time to start removing a lot of those big plants, especially the Asian plants and such, and trying to incorporate some North American plants back in here. At this point, we're at the 15-minute mark, so for those of you who stuck with me, thank you very much. That's really what I'm doing with this tank, where I plan on going, and I hope to give you some updates. Thank you.